Pricing discounts are never good. There's a trick to it though, right? Because there's perceived discounts, right? You get it in marketing all the time, right? Every advertisement you get, everything you see online basically is you're being told that there's a, this is a discount, right? And so, but it's really just a draw. There's a sales pitch that's part of everything that you do. So in general, you shouldn't actually be giving a discount. You should be giving a perceived discount,
Mm.
right? You shouldn't be lowering your price to win a job. That's never a good thing to do. Even if the client says, I can get it cheaper somewhere else. So, I mean, I could show you a landscaping. It's not a completed job
Mm.
because they haven't found somebody that can, or whatever the reason is. I don't know what the reason is,
Mm.
but I've quoted this thing 3 years in a row and they just still haven't done it. And it's a common area for a homeowner subdivision, and the weeds are taller than me. Now I'm not very tall, but to have weeds taller than me, that's still pretty tall. So, and it's a mess, when I go there, because we actually mow it. We do the lawn, and it's like I can almost mow over the landscape beds just to cut the weeds down. It's
Yeah.
just nasty. I feel like I should do that, just,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to because and so, and the reason I brought that up is because we submitted these quotes multiple times, and the guy who gets the quote basically says, well, I could go get this material for this amount, and my answer is generally go ahead.
Mm.
Let's see you move it because it's rock,
Mm.
it's stone, it's not easy to move, right? And so they think they think the price should be cheaper because they can get the material for the same price as I get it, basically.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really the same price, but it's close, right?
Mm.
They can find it, right? They just do a Google search online or whatever, find some place arbitrary 100 miles away, whatever, and they think that they can get the price that we get it for,
Mm.
right? But that's not our price. Our price isn't just materials. Our price is, for me to drive to any job site with one truck and one trailer and
Mm.
the equipment that I need to use to do just about any project, it's $100,000
Mm.
of cost that I've got to recover,
Yeah.
right? Just because I own it doesn't mean that it's a forever piece of equipment
Mm.
or tool. That tool needs to be replaced.
Mm.
Therefore, I have to charge the replacement cost of that tool. Because what happens is at the end of life of any tool or piece of equipment, there's an expense, right? So if I'm not preparing for that expense ahead of time, then when that expense comes, then it's going to eat my profit,
Mm.
right? So I'm not making money to buy equipment. That's what, and a lot of guys in this business don't understand these
Yeah.
small nuances that you're working to, and you're making all this money or whatever amount of money you're making, and you're thinking, oh, I can go buy this tool, right? Well, you go buy that tool, now you're out money, right? And if you haven't prepared to buy the tool, now you're in debt.
Mm.
So now you're below what I consider what's called the baseline. There's a baseline that you should always be operating under, or actually operating not under, operating above. So if you're operating under that baseline, that means you're carrying a lot of debt load and you're not, your pricing may be okay, but you may not have everything included in your pricing. And that's, and you're seeing that you're making some money, right? But then all of a sudden this new job or this other job, comes up and, a customer wants you to do something. You're like, okay, do I buy this tool or maybe just rent it?
Mm.
Right? Then you can rent tools, which is another part of costing, right? So if you're renting the tool, you need to add that rental agreement. They don't need to know, right? You don't tell the client, but you don't need to, right? I'm renting a piece of equipment, but you put the cost of that piece of equipment in the quote. And so you're not taking money out of money that you would be making in terms of profit to rent a piece of equipment. You need to make sure that all of your costs are within the quote.
Yeah.
And then you have your, whatever your margin is. So you have to have numbers for all of these things. And when you discount, then the reason people do discounting is they're desperate for a job, right? They feel like they have to get this job, or right. But when you do that, then the next job becomes more desperate.
Mm.
And so you don't want to do that. You want to be able to walk away from work. You want to be able to say no.
Yeah,
If you're not going to get the price that you need, you just say, okay, let the other guy do it. I have that go on all the time, right? And the funny thing is that happens more often when I spend more time with a client to win a job. It's the weirdest thing. If I give a lot of my energy and a lot of my time for free, for some reason, they tend to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if somebody asks me for a quote, right, and then they start talking about, do you have some ideas or these kinds of, and they want me to give them all this information, I'll kind of just nod my head and talk and get as much information from them about the project and the job and everything. And then I'll give them one quote, and I'll explain that this is based on the information you gave me. Roughly, this is just a very generic quote. But once you make a deposit, then I will start preparing a design and all of the other stuff. But without the deposit, and the deposit has to be 50% of the quote, the general quote I gave. This way it locks them in. Otherwise, I don't really want to spend any more time on it.
Yeah.
Just my own experience. That's covers the topic we're talking about, right? Is discounting, right? And how it backfires in the long run. So in a sense, if you give away free time, you're discounting your service, actually. You're discounting your value.
Yeah.
So it's that's kind of, I think, the important lesson in this. You don't want to give discounts. Like currently, I kind of love being a senior because I get that all the time. Can you offer a senior discount? And I'm like, no, I'm a senior. Why would I do it? And I tell them that, I'm a senior. I've been doing this for 30 years. Why would I give you a discount? Because you're old, because you don't have money. Well, that's not my problem, right? You don't have money to pay for this. That's not my problem, right? It drives me nuts, all of these, offering these special services for people, for first responders. Honestly, I have a thing like, why? What's the, and the thing is that in a sense, it's slightly dishonest because you give the impression you're giving special, some sort of special advantage. But in reality, it just means that you could charge less, right?
Sure.
To everybody.
Yeah.
Why charge somebody else more because they haven't done something that somebody else has done, right? How is that even right to give that kind of discount? And the thing is that that's just the way marketing works. That's how they bring people in. It sounds good, but in reality, on the flip side, I'm not sure it's totally honest and upright. So
Much like
anyway, that's kind of
it might not be much like the discount.
Yeah,
be honest that they can actually do the job for that price, or quality even.
Yeah, and it's similar to it's similar to welfare. I'm not a big fan of welfare, so just it should always be temporary. If you get it, everybody's capable, and to work, right? So I know it makes me look bad when I talk like that, but I don't care. I've worked hard my whole life, right? And I pay high taxes because other people are unwilling to work. That's the only reason taxes are the way they are. There isn't a great human benefit, right? We were talking about this before, right? Strong people create good times, right? Good times create weak people, right? Weak people create bad times,
Yeah.
right? Bad
It's like
times
it
create
continues.
strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we don't, the goal there is we don't want to create bad times.
Yeah.
And the thing is I was thinking about this today. Now we're talking, we've sort of veered into it.
Mm.
I was thinking about this today, right? I'm the last year of the baby boomers. So the baby
Oh,
boomer generation is 1945, 46 to 1963.
oh,
So I was born in 1963.
yeah.
So
Oh, so you're the exact same age as my mum. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah. So I'm the last year of the baby boomers, right?
Mm.
And the baby boomers created everything, the wealth,
Mhm.
all of the stuff that we basically have today was created, during that time. So it's good times, right?
Mm.
That generation created good times. But now those good times, we've created weak people.
Mm.
And so we're starting to deal with weak people. What do weak people want? They want everything for free. They
Mm.
don't want to do the hard stuff, right? We had the World War II generation, the generation before baby boomers that struggled, right? And it's very interesting because I listen to this video every day on gratitude, and Tony Robbins talks about this, and I love it every time I hear it because
Mm.
you know because he talks about in the early 1900s, right? We had World War One, right? So out of World War One, right? We you had the Roaring Twenties,
Mm.
right? So he talks about somebody who's young, right, who comes out of World War One, a terrible time, right? But then you get the Roaring Twenties,
Mm.
and it's like all this new technology with radio and vehicles and airplanes and all this technology boom, right? And then so they're kind of excited and hoping for the future. And 10 years later, right, you have Hitler
Mm.
running throughout, creates World War II, right? No, actually, first before Hitler, the you have the Depression, the Great Depression.
Oh, yeah.
No jobs, right? Just people are jumping out of with the stock market crash, people
Yeah.
jumping out of buildings and just right. So there goes that hope, right? Right. And then the next 10 years later, then you have World War II,
Mm.
right? And it looks like the world's going to end,
Mm.
right? And you have these ups and downs, right? And but you had strong people at
Mm.
that time, right? And the strong people created what we have now. And then right? So today we have a lot of technology, right? So we do have like a boom in technology, but it's creating this period where, you know, people they're basically jealous, envious, kind of the low character um, attributes, So we're anyway, that's not everybody, right? So we have, you have both
Yeah.
good and bad, you
Yeah.
know.
In any case, yeah.
In any case, everywhere, right? So it's, and like we talked about that, I don't know, a week ago or so, there people flow from one to the other depending
Mm.
on periods in their life. They could be just doing fantastic, I mean, you have movie stars, right? Who are right at the top of their game externally, but then they doing drugs and
Mm.
have all these internal problems, right, that they can't deal with,
Yeah.
right? Because they haven't done the internal work,
Mm.
right? They have the talent or the skill to achieve something externally, but they don't have the internal foundation,
Mm.
right? So then it all becomes a mess, So, but anyway, it's veered way off,
That was good. That was really
So, but yeah, so we don't want to discount prices.
good.
That's the important part.
More
Don't
relevant.
discount prices. Market your business in a way that you don't have to discount prices. That's really the objective, right? You can offer something, but what you offer is not a lowering of your price.
Mm.
You just add a benefit that somebody gets from what you do. And you can do that like in any kind of business, right? You create a perceived value
Mm.
and then you can offer a lower price,
Mm.
but it's really not a lower price for the service or activity that you're doing. It's just a perceived value. They're getting a greater value than what you're charging. And part of that too is setting proper expectations with the client.
Yeah.
That's really one of the important parts when you're pricing or off, submitting a proposal, is that the client understands the, expectations. They have the right expectations. You don't you can over deliver, right? Which is always a good thing, but don't set expectations improperly about a job. I run into this all the time when it comes to literally just weeding landscape beds. They let their thistle and some of their weeds grow 5 feet tall. Like I was talking about that job, grows 5 feet tall and then seeds, and then so you can put down pre-emergent to kill seeds, but the type of weeds that grow through root systems as opposed to just an individual seed, right? You can pull an individual weed out that's growing on its own. You've solved that problem. But once they grow so much, especially thistle is it's one of the worst, worst ones. We can come in and it can be a total mess when we get there, and we just clean it off and it looks beautiful. But in a week, they've got new thistle coming up, right? They call me and I tell them every time I do a job like this, like, hey, we can turn the soil, we can do so much, but there's stuff in your landscaping that we can't take out because you've let it get so overgrown. We would literally need to excavate a foot down, right? And they don't want to do that because that would be very expensive for a lot of these big properties. So we basically tell them we're going to do the landscaping, but we're going to probably have to come back for almost a whole season, every week to every other week until we can get it under control and can actually chemically, kill the plants or kill the weeds. We don't want to kill plants. We want to just kill weeds. So just to clarify terminology there. So, but it's a challenge because, people, they think once it looks great, they don't have to touch it again for a year. Right. I try to tell them every time, look, this is going to be an ongoing problem because you let it go. Like I have a client that wants me to quote their landscaping, and it's beautiful. They have a drawing and everything, beautiful landscape, but their house is a mess. And I'm questioning whether I even want to spend any time on it. Right. I mean, it'd be a huge project. But before I quote it, and I was just thinking about this today, actually, I'm going to ask them, I'm going to say, you're going to spend all this money on this landscaping, right? So look at your landscaping today. And do you really want to spend the kind of money you're going to need to spend on your landscaping and let it get the way it looks today? Because their landscaping right now is a mess. I mean, just literally it's a mess. And my thinking is, as a businessman, right? You think, who cares? I'm going to make money. I'm going to do this job, but I can't work that way. I'm going to be honest with them and just say, you've got this, almost $250,000 landscape project you want to do. Are you really going to care for it once it's done? What's going to motivate you after it's done? Because it doesn't end just because you changed out all your landscaping. You're going to have the same thing happen over a period of time. And, the job they want to do is literally going to probably cost $4,000 to $6,000 a year just to maintain it. So that's the question I'm going to ask them. Are you prepared for that? Is that really what you can get a beautiful drawing. It looks gorgeous. It's fantastic. I want to install it. Right. But when it's done in a few years, is it going to look the same as it does now? Why not just fix up what you have now? Right. Anyway, that's my next conversation with them. So, and then we'll go from there. I mean, they have other work that they need even before they can do this that they got to fix. Even, they've got their whole driveways. one whole section is just collapsing. Somehow they have some water running underneath it. So it's literally, if a little piece breaks off, I would be able to sink my leg into it underneath, because I can already see that there's like a big hole underneath one section of it. So, and if you step on one part, it wobbles like this. You know, it's like, so I have to have that conversation with them too. So
it's all about setting the right expectations, as you say.
Yep, setting the right expectations, and you know, just I'm straight with my clients, you know, so those that are willing to hear it. Some don't like it, but I'm okay with that. So.
Yeah, that's their problem. It's something for them to
A very good friend of mine once said to me, and I have a new customer is born every day. So don't worry about losing somebody. You don't want to do anything wrong, but just, you know, there are lots of reasons why your customer base changes, you know. So don't, you know, I would advise people, don't sweat it. It's not always you, you know. And when you have employees, it's definitely not always you. Right. Anyway, that's our conversation for today.